So, I caught Don and stuff. Hey Don, I caught you do all this stuff.
So that's my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it.
Best one yet.
Actually, I have 5 items. I'll make them quite short. But I will say that if anyone has any interest in what I'm doing or I've done or show you, you're more than welcome to come to my home at any time and we can discuss things in more detail. And I do have a list because I knew if I didn't make the list, I'd be standing up here in front of you with a blank expression on my face. Something similar to when I go to the fridge. And I open the door and that light comes on and it's like a delete button. Why am I here?
The vault should be up here.
So the first piece I have is a sander flapper that I worked with Richard to design. Dremel did have a sander flapper. The problem with it was that, or the issue with it wasn't really a problem. In order for it to work, you had to put the sandpaper right through the unit and it wrapped around twice. What that did, it caused a bump every 180 degrees. So with Richard, we drilled a hole down the center. I don't know if you can see that or...
I can maybe zoom in for you.
We drilled a hole down the center of it. And what this did, it enabled me to fold the paper over. I don't know if you can see
if I'm just trying to find your hands here. Okay, there we go. Yep, there, I got it.
And can you see the crease in the paper or no?
Put the paper near the tip.
There.
It's behind your head.
Take my word for it, it's there. Anyhow, so with the fold, I'm able now to just insert it right into the slot. And then to develop it a little further, again, I don't know if you can pick that up. The circular piece of metal here with the slot through it, the hole through it, and then I reduced the area on one side. So what that enabled me to do is to insert the paper, and when it comes right around, there's no bump anymore. And not having the bump, it really changed what I could do with the unit itself. But, let's see. The other thing with these units are, it's really subject to the area. So I've got some different size. Again, I'm not sure if you can pick up on these. Different size papers. And the wider the strip is, the shorter it has to be, and the narrower it is, it can be longer, because it's subject to the area in rotation. So you just have to judge it like that. And the other thing that I do with them is on the larger pieces like this, I cut them into little strips so it'll go around shapes and forms. So I'll just to demonstrate what the other thing I found is the slower the speed, the better off you are. But you can it does another neat thing. If you want to, when this happened to me, I was inspired to what I could do with this. So I have a couple of projects in mind, and it does it all itself. It was quite by accident when I came across it. And yeah, I find the paper with the Velcro type backing and the 150 grit is the one that it'll last a lot longer than regular types of sandpaper and different brands of sandpaper. This is Sia, I forget the exact version of it. And I have them in, I cut them in strips of 80, 120, 150, 200. But I find the 150 is probably the best one to use. And yeah, again, this particular tool, it has a very slow rotation, and I find that really helps as well. So my second item is pledge. Been playing around with pledge for 20 years now, and I'm still learning how it works. So this piece here, it would be ready for the pledge now. And what it does, it just strengthens the wood fibers. It really, amazingly, like this is a finished piece. And you can see how much detail I can get into that. And it's because the fibers are so strong. Another benefit with it is that when you get down to smaller diameters and radiuses, because it's stronger, the process is slower. So the sanding takes a little longer to do. It gives you more time before you get too thin and you've got a problem on your end. So this is my pledge, and it's actually I think it's the same sponge I started with 20 years ago, and it's
Not quite wasted money.
it's well seasoned. So the method I used and found over the years is things like this. I usually use an artist paintbrush, and I just paint it on.
Is that your white walnut you were talking about?
Sorry,
Is that your white walnut you were talking about?
this one?
Yeah.
No, this is applewood.
Okay.
It works with any species of wood. I don't think it has a preference myself. It seems to be friendly with everything. Anyhow, I'll just put a little bit on. Then I leave it for about 5 minutes or so. And if it doesn't fully penetrate into the surface of the wood, I'll just take a piece of paper and just blot it off. And you don't want to leave it build up on the surface because it is acrylic and it does dry hard, and it's a pain to remove it once it's dry hard. But what it does is, I have a piece of, maybe I could bring it in next month. It's a spider's web, and I started off quite big with it in diameter, and slowly I kept decreasing it thinner and thinner, but each time I would put an application of pledge on it. And I got to a point where I was still apprehensive about how strong it would be. So I put a good coating on it. Anything that didn't go in, I blotted it off, and I put it aside for 30, 31 days. And I think it's like cement. Over that period of time, it really cured hard, amazingly hard. So much so that I continued making it thinner and thinner and thinner. And now the whole thing is the size of about as thick as a toothpick. Just got to get some water. So if you have sculpted wood, it's the same type of process. Like you take the sponge, put it everywhere, and then anywhere that it beads up, just dab it off and put it aside for 24 hours. Go through the same application again the next day, and until it beads up everywhere. And that wood will be, spalted wood will actually be a lot stronger than the regular cord wood. It just gets that hard.
So it's like a cheap version of cactus juice.
I've never used cactus
Oh.
juice.
Well, cactus juice is what is it, heat activated resin that is applied under vacuum?
I can confirm that it's cheap, and I can confirm that it works. And yeah, it's like this piece here. There's just a few little places where it's beaded up. And I will take the time to take it off. And the paper just has to touch it, and it's like a blotter, it sucks it right up. And again, yeah, if you have any questions while I'm rambling on, feel free to ask them.
Don, I've been using it as a sanding sealer on all my wood. After you demonstrated it many years ago, and I recently tried it as a sanding sealer. Have you ever tried that or experienced that?
What's that? Say,
Have you ever tried it as a sanding sealer? Do you have any experience with that?
no, I personally haven't done that, but the nice thing about it, yeah, it raises the grain right away as soon as, obviously it's wet, so it raises the grain, but.
Yeah. And it
But I found that with spalted wood, I'll take it down to a reasonable wall thickness, and then I'll start to do the application on the outside. I won't bother with the inside. I'll finish the outside when it's spalted, and get a hard surface on it. Get it, and then it's finished, and I can judge at that time, estimate how much thickness I had to leave in order to get past the tear, because there'll be tear. And then you can judge how thin to make the wall on the inside before you start to do the process again on the inside. And that way you're going to have reasonable expectation of having the inside not meet the outside. It's never a good scenario. Okay, so yeah, if there's if anybody wants to know more about the pledge and other processes, feel free to come and visit me or whatever you want to do.
Don, if you use the pledge to seal, and I'm in the process now of doing some candlesticks, and you got them down, but I want to seal it. Can you put stain over that over the sealer?
Stain, I wouldn't recommend it. I would try a sample somewhere.
Okay.
I know you can put any kind of finish on it, but if you're trying to stain the wood, I don't think it will. Because the other project I had with the spider's web, coming out the end of it, there's 4, 5, 6 little bugs coming out, and I wanted to steam it and bend it out of different shapes. So I took samples, similar diameters, and I put the pledge on half of them and half of them not, and I put them in the steamer. The ones with the pledge, I could bend them, but the ones without the pledge were obviously much easier. And the radius that I wanted wasn't achievable with using the pledge. So what I would suggest, anytime you're going to do something like that, is make a sample and try it. Don't try it on the project itself, and see what happens. But and these are I brought a whole bunch of. I make sanding sticks for sanding different shapes, so I can get in when I gotta get inside to get something and sand it on the inside. And it's obviously for the finishing. Oh, one thing I did forget to mention to you was with the 80 grit for the standard flapper, because it's so thick, it was difficult to bend it by hand. Like these ones here, take, pinch it, bend it, and I don't know if you can see that, David.
I just
And
tried.
it'll go in quite easily. But with the 120, and especially the 80, it was difficult to bend it. So I modified a pair of pliers. On one side I reduced the material there. And then what I can do is I put it into the unit, into the pliers, wherever I want it to bend, and then I just bend it over, and it creases it, squeeze it together, and then take the pliers again, pinch it, and now it fits in quite easily. You don't want to force it into the piece. You will start to spread where the slot is. Yeah, with these units here, I also make little, sometimes you gotta get in and cut something on the outside. So I just make little saws, like it's just a jigsaw blade, different types. Some flat shapes. I usually mark the grit on them. This is 220. And again, it's another different shape.
What do you stick the sandpaper on with, just wood glue?
These little skewers are mostly always bamboo wood.
Yeah, but you stick
And
the
I used to glue them with regular thin CA glue, which is fine for a period of time. What tends to happen with them is it separates from the bamboo. So now I use the thick CA glue, and it has a much longer shelf life, if you will. So the process is like this one. There's no shape to it yet. So basically, that's how it comes. So I can make this piece down here concave, convex, whatever shape I want it, the width that I want, and if I want it tapered. So a lot of times, I don't know if you can see that either. But
Yeah, I
anyhow,
can.
I'll put
If
it
you,
there.
okay.
It's tapered, and what that does, it just allows me to get into other areas a lot simpler. The process is, I would take the skewer and I would take it by belt sander. I would either put the taper on it, whatever shape I wanted to put on it, I would put that on. I would apply the CA glue to the wood. Prior to doing that, I would cut a piece of sandpaper that's going to fit the skewer. And I would apply the accelerator to the sandpaper. And then I just take this unit and push it down onto the sandpaper, and it's instantly bonded. And the other thing you can do, sometimes if I have a radius, I push it onto the sandpaper, then I just roll it, and it rolls the paper around. On the front, if I want it where I can get into and I need it like a sleigh, I put the radius there and do the same thing, put it on, roll it up. And they last for a long period of time. So what I'm doing, the nice thing about it, let's see if I can find something. What they do, and again, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see this thing, but if you look at the surface of the wood, it's not really that smooth. I don't want to lose the shape that I have, but I want it to flow a lot better. Like this one compared that one to that one, and one of them's got a nice flow to it, and the other one's got a shape to it, but it doesn't have, it's not really alive at all. So with these units here, because I can sand it in this method here, because it's a nice flat surface, I can make that very uniform in roundness, and I can elongate the flow of the curves so that everything flows like it. Of course, the wider the piece, the longer the flow is going to be. If I need a short one, I use a thinner type pieces. But it really makes a difference. When I get down to the finishing stage, I just want it to be simple. And it really is a simple method.
Don, on the outside of the curves, I can see you putting the flat thing against that, but on the inside of the curves, what do you do?
Same thing. Same thing. You just, see if I can find a piece that would work for you. Yeah, you don't want to use a round piece because it won't work. You'll never get a nice smooth flow to it. So I don't know if you can see that there, Jim. I'm not sure if I did it this way, you might see it. I always wanted to play an oboe and I never learned how to play, and this is as close as I get. But you can see like it just smooths it right down. Yeah, if you use round on round, it's not going to flow. It'll be round, but it won't flow. But the square will make it. The same as on the outside of a ball if you're using the shear scraping. With a flat scraper, you can get nice radius, nice smooth radius. But, yeah. Moving right along, he says. Yeah, I owe Richard a lot of what he's helped me to expand on. Maybe I'll put them out here. These are extenders that Richard and I have played with for a couple of years now. And it's gotten various, it went through various stages. But one where at least I'm happy. I keep changing it for Richard, so he's not as happy as I am, but so how these work. This one here, I'll just put it there, maybe you can you pick that up?
Yeah.
That one there, I use that in my my Ford micro motor. So the little shaft on the end fits right into the micro motor, and then it extends, the black part is the extension for me, and there's a hole that's drilled on the inside, and there's two diameters needed, unfortunately. Dremel has one diameter, and like Lee Valley and other tool companies have a second diameter, so there's a slight variation in them, which requires two different extenders. And through his, I won't bore you with the details, but through a series of evolution, with the Dremel tools now, what we do is, where normally you would have your collet inside the nut, this part of the shaft here, you take the collet out, and this part of the shaft fits right into where that collet was. And in the beginning, these were about $20 Canadian to buy these nuts. And then Dave suggested Banggood. And at Banggood, it went from $20 down to 63 cents. So I ordered 15 of them. And the only issue with them was that they're made very, very close to the insert diameter. So if there's any kind of contamination at all, eventually you're going to get friction and rubbing. So I put them in a collet on the lathe because they're aluminum, and I just took a tool I use for homemade tool for hollowing, and I reduced the length and I reduced the diameter. And using 2 O-rings, Richard's suggestion was an O-ring, and I found with the Dremel nut versus the Banggood nut, the inside shape is slightly different. So with the Dremel nut, I can use 1 O-ring to secure it in place, and with the Banggood, it requires a second one. For 63 cents, I'm quite willing to spend the extra money on the second O-ring. But this way here, I purchased a number of more extenders from Richard, and I can, obviously, you can see the different ones that are there. So the ones I use a lot, I leave them set up. It's very simple to change them. You just have to heat the, it's CA glue that holds them in place. You just have to heat the shaft up a little bit, and it pops right out. And then if there's a little CA glue left in it, you just keep the flame there and it burns it out. So it's quite simple to use. However, it's going to be hard for you to believe, but I made a mistake one time.
No.
Yeah, I know.
Say it's not so.
It's shocking, it really is.
Did you get that on tape, Dave?
Yeah, well, I'm like Trump though, I've never said that. It wasn't me that said that, that was somebody that was speaking when I was moving my mouth, and it's fake news. Fake news.
False news, yeah.
Yeah, one time I was in a hurry and I took one bit out and I put the next one in, and I never let it cool down enough. So as soon as I turned the Dremel on, I could hear this winging noise going by. Anyhow, so you live and learn. Yeah. And my last topic is wet sanding. I've been doing it for years. This is wax that's used for wet sanding. So when you're sanding something, you just take some of this wax, you put a little dab in here and there, and then you start sanding. It does there's a lot of acids that present themselves. One is there's hardly any dust. It picks up all the dust, and it gathers it up, and it just rolls off in blobs. There's no heat. You won't get heat tracks because there's no heat. It just cleans it up. You're basically eliminating scratches because there's a layer of lubricant between the sandpaper and the wood. It's just, yeah, I found it. I was introduced to it a number of years ago, and I used to use just a Chapman's wax, but New Zealand or Australia, I forget where, they make this now, and it's really worth it if you do any kind of sanding and you don't want to be playing around with it too much. Anyhow, that's my spiel. Are there any questions or?
Who sells the Ultra Shine here at Lee Valley?
No, I ordered that online.
I don't think.
I don't, yeah.
I can't remember where I got it actually.
I've got a couple of things, and actually it's funny, it springboards along exactly what Don was talking about. The infamous product we talk about, but nobody ever seems to have a bottle. Pledge.
Yes.
About $9, whether you get it at Walmart or somebody, food store, whatever. Don was talking about using it as a pre-sander, I guess you could say, or a hardener for sanding.
Yeah, I use it for cutting.
This is a piece of maple straight off the planer. Nothing was done to it. didn't sand it, it's got a decent plane on it. What I did is I coated it 3 times with pledge. First coat, like Don said, sinks in, disappears. And you have to wait a whole, maybe a half hour, if you really want to wait that long. I took 600 sandpaper, went down it once. It's one of the flexible sand pads. Went over it once, put another coat on. What I did find, the difference that when you're using it on punky wood, is the sponge puts too much on. And you'll see little droplets of pledge. If you leave those little droplets on, of course, then you have a very hard droplet when it hardens. So after I used the sponge and I seen that it actually was layering too much on.
It'll beat up.
It just puts too much liquid on. I just used a little piece of paper towel, dipped it in, and wiped it on. Or you could brush it on. So, second coat, third coat. So, on the bottom, you will see this is the pledge that's not been touched. The top part, I had the buffer on and I rubbed it over the wax wheel on the buffer. Just hold that, I've got something to go with it. When you look at, by now it's called Fledge Floor Care. And it's had probably 10 different names. And in every country it had a different name. And in Europe and England it has a smell, so kids won't drink it. But when you look at the website, it's very interesting. You can put it on ceramic tile, flagstone floors, both of those have to be sealed, linoleum, sealed masonry, sealed natural stone floors, non-wax floors, rubber tile, sealed slate floors, sealed terrazzo, vinyl floors, and sealed wood. That's right off the manufacturer's website. So you tell me that that's not a hard product. Like Don says, if you leave too much on, it doesn't sand well. So what I'm saying, for $9, you have a damn good finish. I'm not talking about pre-sanding with it or anything else. Just use it as a finish. Yeah.
You gotta remember, this stuff is for floors. You spray it on the floor, you slop a mop around on the thing, it's self-leveling.
But the big
It's a
thing
remarkable
is,
product. It really
the
is.
manufacturer on their website is saying what you can use it on. And today, a manufacturer is not putting anything in writing that they can't back up.
What would you seal the wood with except the same mold product?
Well, you could seal it with whatever. But the point is, it's not just a punky wood hardener, and it's not just a sanding mix. You can use it for all of those, but you can use it as a crystal clear finish. I got into doing airbrushing about 6-8 months ago. Airbrushing is a totally different thing. That's a whole other world to learn. But of course, a lot of airbrushing is people doing models. And all of us here, I guess we're all male tonight. How many had a little airplane or something? The gray, the little plastic windows, you put the decal on. Well, today they take that little airplane and it's got 7,000 coats and it looks like it just come off the showroom floor at Boeing. The little plastic windows that come in those kits are not clear. Or the vast majority of them are not clear. They got a milky look to them. What they do is they dip the plastic piece in future and pull it up and let it dry. It turns to clear, perfectly clear on virtually everything that they do. They use it to finish as a finish coat on models, and I've tried it on a piece I had on, and an airbrush doesn't generate a lot of liquid, and you just slowly go back and forth, and you watch it, and it will be dull, and it gets a little brighter, and a little brighter, and a little brighter, and a little brighter. and you stop when you have the sheen that you want. So it's a lot more than what Don has used it for, and Richard. It's something that I think we could quite easily take and use to finish virtually anything, because it goes over virtually anything.
In the article I was sending around for future, yeah, that was the modeling part in there, but they also said that if you screw up doing your little piece, rinse it in ammonia, comes right off.
Well, I know it's water,
While it's still.
it really washes up with water, no problem.
You rinse it right off in ammonia and you straight right square one and start again.
As long as it hasn't dried.
Yeah.
But being so clear, it sprays through anything, an airbrush is an example, which is a pretty fine nozzle. Sprays through it very easily, a lot better than paint. So spend the $10, go buy one and use it. And the only thing that I found on airbrushing, the airbrush paints, even though they're acrylic, they harden up quite well. Danish oil finishes will not dry. It takes about 4 days for it to dry if you touch the Danish oil finish on top of the airbrushing paint, which is acrylic paint. You put Future on, and it's dry in minutes. That brings me into something else. And some people may have looked and said, don't touch, and thought, well, who's that arrogant prick? You can't touch your product. There's a reason. This is part 2. We, as a group of woodturners, quite often feel shiny is the best. I fell into that trap when I started. Some people love it and never change. They always want it shiny. And the more it shines and the more it shines and the more work you do on it, the more chance, number one, of having little ridge marks in the finish, unless you're really, really good at it. The biggest thing I notice, if you have something sitting up on a stand, and you've got 4 or 5 items, and they have different versions of gloss on them, what you see is a reflection of the light hitting the item. No one can see what the wood is, because it's so damn shiny. And we spend a lot of time trying to make things smooth and shiny. But is it the best for the people who are looking at it? Forget about what our ego says we want to do to it. Most stuff in galleries is not overly shiny at all. And Stephen Swirling said something to me a few years ago about not putting a lot of shine on things. And I would never tell Steve Swirling that he's correct. But he's right. But this little guy was a piece of wet spruce. It was a spruce right at the root ball end of the trunk. Cut a tree down a couple years ago. It's been laying in the garage. I didn't throw the root burl, and so it's not dry. It wasn't really wet, but it wasn't dry. So I wanted to turn it into something, so this is what I ended up with. The first thing you'll notice, that for a little piece, it has some really nice grain. You also notice it's not shiny. And if that sits up on the stand where it does, with a variety of other ones, and you look up at any time, you can see the grain in this wood. So I'm supporting my theory that you don't need shiny items all the time. Think of the woods you're using. I haven't seen a shiny item off of Don's shop in a long time.
Depends on the design and the style and what it needs.
And you're putting on a lighter shine on places where it doesn't need to be shiny.
Subject, yeah.
Yeah. So if you're shining everything and buffing it on a bio-buffing system, you may be taking things away from the work that you just finished. The second part of this is, how does it look? I'm not bragging, I just want to show. How does it look for scratches?
What's scratching?
There isn't any. It was wet sanded. It was wet sanded with what I've always used if I'm wet sanding. The finish that's going on it. There is no cross-contamination if the finish that you're gonna work on, that you're gonna use at the end, is used for sanding.
Will you use a white pad?
Pardon?
A white pad, is that what you use?
No, it's, I'll use anything from a flexible sand pad to a piece of stiff sandpaper, whatever.
I use a white pad with wax on a lot of my
But
stuff.
all I put on it, I use the finish. In this case, it's Danish oil. Danish oil normally would be shiny. This is not shiny because it's been used as a filler. It's so soft where it's spruce that if my ring touched it, I had a little indentation into it. Because if you notice, the inside is not natural. The inside has been airbrushed. Why was it airbrushed?
So you can't see him.
Partly because it was a piece of wet spruce. And if anybody's turned wet spruce, it's not very friendly. But it dried, and I sanded it, and it wasn't the greatest looking on the inside. At the same time, I'm experimenting with color. So I primed the inside, and then I painted it. And before I primed, I primed it, and I looked inside, and I thought, nah, I don't think even black will cover that ugliness up. So what did I do again? I thought, no, this is what I want people to see. It's not the inside. So I took wood filler, softened it up into a paste with a little bit of finish. And I took a spoon, and I took the back of the spoon, and I spread it all over the inside. Let it dry. Sanded it. The wood filler stayed in all the cracks and crevices on the inside, and it sanded smooth. Then it got airbrushed. So maybe you've turned something and it doesn't look the greatest. There's all kinds of ways to fix it. Just stop, think a little bit. Did people need to see the inside? No, because the beauty's on the inside. Now, if anybody was observant when I passed it around, if they could see it, you'll see a little black, little line. It's not black, it's actually dark gray, bluish gray. That crack was filled with CA glue. The primer I used, didn't know it at the time, the propellant in the primer was acetone. What dissolves CA glue? Acetone. The color in the primer sucked right up the CA glue. The primer did its job, but the acetone did its job too. And to the point where the CA glue had gone into the wood, even though the crack is very small. And that color went right with through the CA glue. The only way to get that out is I would have had to take and cut that wood back far enough, refill it, to get it to be natural. And since it's not going anywhere other than my house, and it was a very good demo product, I left it where it was.
Gives it character.
It gives character. But when you're using CA glue, think about what you're going to use with it. Now, I don't know if that joint failed. I'm not going to test it, and I don't care. But that's what happened, and it's only because I used CA glue. If I would have used wood glue, that wouldn't have happened. The primer would be on the inside, wouldn't have come on the outside. But the biggest thing, don't make everything shiny. Think about what the wood is first, and wet sand it when you can. Because if you look at that, you sell a lot of stuff to people, and they don't like things that's all scratched up. And a piece of soft spruce is pretty easy to scratch. Not bad for no power,
No, and that little mark wouldn't bother me one bit.
Probably anybody here might want to use it, but anyway,
I've done the same thing.
my 2 cents on
And
it.
it works.
So darn light that it falls over. That's one of the reasons I don't want it picked up.
Okay, so, I do quite a few pens, so I'm tired of, well, when I first started, go back up. When I first started doing pens, I thought, well, they said you can push the assemblies together with a clamp. So I got one of those Irwin style clamps with the jaws on it and nice and soft. Put the pen assembly in with the nib end, with a nice pointy end with a nice circle in it, and promptly cored right through my clamp pad, and the thing was stuck. I had to pull it back out. So to get away from that, I reverted to going to a bench vise, but it was steel. So I then had to, when I was using it for this type of stuff, I'd have to tape a block of hardwood to it so that it wouldn't be penetrated by the parts, but it would have enough resistance that I can force it together. But you're trying to, these parts, sometimes the transmissions are quite long, going into a fairly long barrel, and you've got to have them pretty much at 90 degrees, because if they're off on an angle and you suddenly crank on that vise, you bend the thing and you're back to square one. So with all of those machinations, I thought, well, I got to do something else, and there's the horizontal presses that you can buy. They're great, they'll do the job, but I know the one that Lee Valley sells, all of the force is going down a shaft being held by sort of like a thumb nut. And when you start cranking on that handle, quite often that thing starts sliding, and you end up having to tighten it even more. And plus all of that pressure is going that way, and what you end up doing is working down the bench with the pen press. So when I saw Princess Auto had one of these things on for sale for, I don't know, $70 or something like that, I thought, well, you know, they say it works, so I'll try it out. So it's got a 1 inch by 1 inch shaft on it, and it comes with this rotating plate that has various holes in it, because when you're using it to press a bearing out of something, you want to be able to pop it through. And so you can do that, but for using for pens, got to wind up the pin. Not meant to come out often, I guess. There you go. So you could move the solid part into the yoke and use it, but that's an awful hard surface to use when you're pushing a pen part together and you got that cap assembly with a nice shiny top on it. You could end up destroying it. So I happen to have a piece of phenolic at the house, and I just measured the size of that pin, and I got a bolt and cut it off and drilled it in and stuck it in, so that when I pop that in place, I've got a surface that's a little bit more friendly to the plated metal parts for the pen. So I then had to protect the pen up here too, so what I did was I went to the dollar store and I bought a cutting board, put it on the table saw, and I cut some 1 inch strips and then cut them into 1 inch pieces, and laminated it with some double-sided turning tape, and just, it's a 1-ton arbor press, so I just put the touch to it, and that helped to hold it together. So, but before I stuck it on, I did my X on it, so I'd find the center point, and I put a 1/2 inch drill bit in my drill press, and I just made a dimple in the end of it. So then what I did was transferred that dimension, cross-section, to my piece of phenolic, traced it out, did the same thing on it, got my center point, and then I did the same thing. I drilled a little dimple in there to register the pen parts. So now, pardon me, when I'm doing a pen, if I've got it in there, and I've got it in there, I've got it in a straight line. So then it's just a matter of taking your time and giving it enough oomph to do the job. So and when I want to, if I ever have to push a bearing out, I still get the plate, so I can do that. It's a heavy sucker, but it gets the job done. That's it. Pardon me.
Gary?
Yes.
If your phenolic plate is not it rotates a bit, those would be out of line. So have you considered gluing a little thing on the bottom of a phenolic plate? So
Not really, because
it's never out of line?
what I can do is put it in place, and then all I have to do is align it, like, normally I'd be facing the front of it so I can see whether it's vertical. And so I'll operate it that way. If it did become a problem, then yeah, I would maybe, so I wouldn't make it a permanent fixture, I'd make some sort of a registration point on the thing so that I would know when it was perfectly in line. The other thing too is you could just take a rod that would give you the registration and then tape it in place or clamp it in place and then just go with it from there. Yeah. Anyway. It was an excuse to go to Princess Auto.
Heavy enough, you don't have to clamp it down, Gary?
You don't have to clamp it down. This thing ain't going to move. Hey, if you got 17 reams of paper, this will make a good paperweight. Yeah.
There's two tools lately that I use a lot, and I use on, I would say I use it on everything now. One is this. This, what I call my sanding table that mounts in the banjo. And when I'm buffing, it's sanding table, it's a buffing table. The buffing wheel is running here. I was going to give you guys a pre-meeting demo, but I will next month if I have the opportunity. The buffing mop is running here, and what this does is give me a place to rest my hands and hold the piece, and quite often rest the piece on here. And I was a little afraid in the beginning. I thought it might be dangerous, but as it's turned out, it's much safer. I find it much safer to use this than not have anything. And it's taken all the strain out of buffing. Buffing wheel is always going down. And so if you don't have a table, you are the one who's supporting it. And it's bad on my back. So this is one thing that everything I do pretty well, acrylic or wood, I end up buffing at the end because I like a shiny finish. You're heretic. The other tool is this little smoothing, I keep saying sand, this little smoothing scraper that has a radiused edge one end and a round edge the other end. If you're in a cove, of course you can use the round edge, and if you're on a flat or straight surface or trying to get into a point, you use this end. So this tool I made and it sort of flies in the face of a lot of the theory on you know, what you can scrape and what you can't scrape. And I find I don't make anything anymore, acrylic or wood, that I don't use this and I don't use the table. So. Yes, Ted?
The tool is really sharp.
Oh, it's quite sharp. I did hear of one gentleman who disputed that it was very sharp, and he had it in a coffee shop this morning. Wasn't me. And he had it on the table, and things got moved around on the table, and it fell off. He now has a hole in his leg here that bled quite profusely, I understand. So yes, it's sharp. Always keep the protection on it. Oh, I'll take it back at this.
Well, I guess it'd be like a centuries old technology here. I had a job the other day do some balusters for staircase. It was a Douglas fir, and I had the steady rest with the wheels. And whenever I do turnings, I like to be able to set my old spindle on top and sight down, put my marks or look under it and sight it. So what I end up doing, I had a bunch of scrap around, so I made this here up, fastened on the bed. I took for a steady rest. I can just put that. Your spindle would be here. I just put that up against it, and I had a pin on top. So I do my turning, and once I get all done, my spindle, down to size, I'd move the exact size one, I'd put it on. Spindle sits in there, I wax it up, so don't like wax the hole up there so it doesn't burn or anything. It works great. When I made a bunch of these here up ahead of time. And to find out where my hole is, I just slide this down into the headstock for the live center, the spur end, and I just put a little mark in this piece here. Take it off, take the compass, get my radius, cut it with the bandsaw, sand it in the drum sander, and away I go. And this piece here is off of a drywall sanding pole. Worked pretty good, adjustable. And of course I had to have something to fasten on the top here, so I went and robbed a cheap socket set until I had a chance to make a bunch of pieces up there.
So is that spring loaded and it presses against the turning?
Well, just by adjusting the,
Or you just screw adjust it?
yeah, and you got a little bit of adjustment. I got a elongated hole here too.
Yeah, alright.
Quite a bit of adjustment on it. Looks pretty good. Zero chatter. I was quite happy with it. I know my one with the 3 wheels worked pretty good too. I find this supreme. And the other thing, when you turn, you don't get all the wood chips getting in between, like, because it's kind of sheltered, right? Or if you got the wheels, sometimes stuff get in. Run a little rough.
I keep wondering with those 3-wheel things, they look like they're just right here in your way trying to turn something.
And every time you do something, you gotta set them again, right?
Yeah.
This one here is just instant.
The old fellas used to do something like that right off the wall behind the lathe.
I did that in my first shop. I had a wall, but now my lathe's in the middle of the floor. So that's why I made it so it was.
Yeah, great idea.
Yeah. Yeah, it works pretty good. It's easier to adjust down the bed too, right?
I don't think they always put a curved recess in it. They just used a straight kind of wedge shape.
Right.
It would fall in until it was tight. So
Right.
in
Yeah.
some cases,
I just kind of think now I may have less chance of burn if I had something to follow the whole surface, right?
yeah, they're better support. Yeah. Very good.
And then when I made the head of this piece here, I put a little piece on here in for the head to, you can see it or not.
It looked like you had as much fun making as you did using it.
Yeah, it's made very beautifully. Isn't it?
To show
Yes,
to
that's really
Now let's
nice
keep it
strap
in
you've
line.
got there.
Serious.
Now if I had to do it all over again, like this piece here, you see it, so I can get different thickness of pieces in here, and my wedge will draw it tight.
Yeah.
But I think if I did it again, I think I'd make up a few of them different ones, because right now when I turn my wood the first time, I put my big piece in here, and then I have to move it aside, to put the smaller piece, like.
Yeah, you could have a whole gang of them, right?
But this way here, I could always keep this in the same spot, put that in,
Yeah.
right, and I can slide it.
And that actually, if you had an open bottom on the hole, that's a piece in your right hand,
Yeah.
if it was a U-shaped open hole, you wouldn't have to take the pin in and out, you could just drop it on there. Because all the force is always gonna be
Right.
pushing that down.
Right, your chisel pushing
I
the
saw a
front.
light bulb there.
But it's not a big, it just flops down pretty easy.
Yeah, it's just that you just go,
Yeah.
Looks good. the
just
way-
ideas.
Just
Yeah,
a
yeah.
quick
Next
question, why couldn't you make it double width and just flip up and down the one you want? Because that rod moves back and forth.
Oh, in here?
Yeah,
Yeah,
put them both in.
right here is fixed, eh?
Hmm?
Right, you mean in here, but that's fixed right now.
Yeah.
And I just squeeze this against that, see that, hold that anywhere if it's tight.
So is that important for that to be tight?
Less chance of chattering if it's
Yeah.
tight.
Just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems to work pretty good for now. Works good for now anyway.
Super idea.
No, I mean,
Quite innovative.
that's how stuff evolves,
Oh,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
So how actually do you get it onto your lathe? You bolt it
Yeah,
through
just like
that
you,
little slip?
yeah,
Okay, so.
I got a little
just
plate
goes
under
right
it.
on the,
yeah.
okay. There's your answer.
Still don't see that.
Show us there.
He doesn't
get it.
I don't see how that.
Think of the banjo.
No, it's fine. Should be fine.
There you go. You just bolt that underneath.
Yeah, that just bolts right there.
Perfect.
Your spindle's in here, and if you wanna check your,
Maybe it's,
Okay. There you go.
yeah.
oh, you missed it, part?
Just different shapes.
No,
Yeah.
it's camera.
Once you get a couple shots on the inside, you can even make one.
Now I gotta make some kind of a, something there to hold this, so it won't drop down.
Why does it have to be so long out, Mike?
I just thought it might be more stable and get a straighter
Okay.
push.
Yeah.
His lade's in the middle of the room, he doesn't care.
No, I just.
Because he didn't want to cut that scrap piece of wood any shorter, because it was a gorgeous scrap piece of wood.
It could have been shorter, but
No, I was just
want to
curious.
cut that nice piece of wood.
anyway, that's my contraption.
Very good.
That's nice.
Anybody else?